Hi, it's Mary Beth Martin, your book buddy friend from Bedford County 4-H, excited to continue reading in our adventures of Willa of the Wood. And last time we really left off at quite a cliffhanger as Willa and Iska were traveling through the tunnels trying to find his brother and sister. So let's find out what happens next as we turn to chapter 59. In my copy, it starts on page 297. Willa hurled herself against Iska and pinned him to the wall with her body, then blended into the brown surface of the woven stick wall just as the guards came. "What are you doing?" Iska whispered. "Stop wiggling," she hissed beneath her breath as she pressed herself against him. As the guards rushed down the corridor, Willa saw that the larger of the two was Lorcan, the commander. "I've been feeding the prisoners in the upper cells just as you ordered," the smaller guard said. "But two of them won't eat, and there's one in the lower cell who has tried repeatedly to escape. It bit one of my guards." "Keep calling out the weak ones," Lorcan told him, "and the next time the one in the lower cell tries to escape, drag it out of here and throw it into the abyss. They need to obey or they die." Willa smelled the stench of the guards' bodies as they passed. When they had finally gone out of sight, she exhaled a long breath of relief and uncovered Iska. "How did you—" He started to ask in amazement, but she grabbed his hand and pulled him down the corridor in the opposite direction of the guards. If they are going down into the lower cells, then she was going up. "Just trust me, Iska," Willa said. "Follow me as fast as you can." They ran up through one tunnel after another, turning corner after corner up through the main corridor of the prison, then down the side tunnel and the many turns that followed, until they finally came to the hole she'd used to sneak her way into the lair. "Crawl in there and hide," she told him. "What? I can't," Iska protested. "We need to find my brother and sister." "Just listen, Iska," she said. I'll go back into the prison for your brother and sister. I swear I will. But I can't have you with me. You're too conspicuous." "Because of that thing you do with your skin?" he said. "That's right," she said. "I can blend and you can't, so I need to go alone." "I'll wait here, but we've got to find them," he said. "Listen to me," she said, grabbing his hands as hard as she could and looking into his eyes. "If I don't return, it means I failed, and you need to make it home to your father on your own. If I don't come back, you've got to get out of here without me." "I understand," he said, nodding. "Be careful." She had put on a good front for Iska's sake so that he'd follow her instructions, but as she ran back up the corridor towards the prison cell, she felt the bile rising up in her throat. Her whole body was filling with dread. A terrible premonition invaded her mind. "We're not going to survive this, Willa," she thought as she ran. She had lived in the vast, dead hollow lair all her life, but after the time she'd spent in the forest, she realized what a truly lifeless place it had become. It had once been the hidden domain of the forest folk, her people of old, living in harmony with the trees and animals around them, the wood witches sculpting its glorious green living walls, but now it had become a dark and sapless hiding place. She had always known that her powers didn't work well in the unnatural layers of the day folk, but this place wasn't much better. After years of the Pateran, there was nothing left here but rotting sticks and dead souls, lifeless Farron followers who'd given up on the beauty of the world. "You were born here and you're going to die here." The words came into her mind as she turned the final corner towards her fate. Without her animal allies and the full powers of the forest, how was she going to find Iska's brother and sister? How was she going to fight off the guards? There were no living trees, no wolves, no bears, no otters, nothing she could draw on for strength, and no one to ask for help. "You're not going to make it," she thought as she ran towards the prison cells. Willa turned the corner and immediately came upon 2 guards near the entrance of the prison. She jerked back, pinned herself to the wall, and blended. "That human has been fighting hard," one guard was saying to the other as they came out of the larger cells. "Then don't go easy on it," the other said. "The harsher you are, the faster it will break." Her skin crawled as the guards walked right past her. She waited for them to go up and out of the prison towards the main area of the lair before she moved. At that moment, an idea came into her mind. The answer had been here right in front of her all this time, but it had taken the guards to remind her. The shouts and screams that she had been hearing, the pleading eyes peering out at her through the lattices of the cells. She had thought there was no one who could help her, but that was wrong. There was someone who could help her. There were many who could help her. They all had mothers and fathers to get home to. They all had brothers and sisters like Iska, and she was surrounded by them. There were no animals or trees she could draw on here, but there was something else. In each of these cells, there wasn't an it, there was a he or a she. There was a human being, a living, breathing, thinking soul with wants and desires just like her, someone fighting to survive. She quickly crept over to the closest cell. "Hey, I'm Willa. What's your name?" she whispered. I didn't do anything. Why am I here?" the voice asked angrily. She couldn't see the prisoner in the cell, but it sounded like an older human boy. "I'm sorry I didn't put you in here," Willa said as she studied the outside of the door, "but I'm going to get you out." "Who are you?" the boy asked, coming to the lattice and looking out. "My name is Willa, and I need your help." "I'm Cassius," the boy said, his voice strong and determined now, almost hopeful. The doors of the cells were bound tightly shut from the outside with knots of vines. Every time she used her power to reanimate the twisted dead sticks of the lair, it sucked the energy out of her, so she knew she couldn't continue with that. It was a slow process, but she pulled and pried at the vines with her fingers, hoping to unfasten them. "You're green," a small female voice said behind her. Willa turned to see a little girl's pale face peering out at her through the lattice of sticks on the other side of the corridor. The little girl looked like she was no more than 7 years old, and Willa could see the streaks of tears that had fallen down her cheeks. "Yes, sometimes I am," Willa said. "What's your name?" "Beatrice," the girl said with her tiny voice. "I'll come for you next, Beatrice," Willa said as she finally figured out how to unfasten the vines and open the door to Cassius's cell. "We don't have much time before the guards return," she said to Cassius as he came out of the cell. He was about 14 years old and had dark brown skin and short black hair. "Now listen," Willa said. "Do you think you're able to run?" "Yeah, I can run," Cassius said, nodding. "I want you to take Beatrice," Willa said as she opened the little girl's cell. "Can you do that?" "Yeah, I can do that," he said. It sounded like he'd do just about anything she asked him at that moment. "All right, good," Willa said, looking up and down the corridor for any signs of approaching guards. As Cassius took Beatrice into his arms, she told him exactly what he needed to do. "Go up this first corridor a little bit, but take an immediate left, follow it around the curve, then turn right, then left, then 2 more lefts, then down." She could see he was listening intently to everything she said. "If you encounter any guards, then pull back into the shadows and hide. If they corner you, then watch out for their spears. They're very sharp. When you reach the escape hole, there will be a boy there named Iska. Tell him Willa sent you. He'll show you the way out. Do you understand?" "Yeah, I got it," Cassius said, holding Beatrice. "We're ready. Now go, Cassius, run and tell Iska to expect more." In the next cell, she found an 8-year-old girl, gave her the instructions, and sent her limping on her way. One door after another, cell after cell, prisoner after prisoner, she freed them as fast as she could untie their doors, asking them if they'd seen the 2 children she was looking for, and then telling them to run, to hide, to help each other get out to the hole. "If you see the guards, run as fast as you can," she told them. "That's 23 so far," she thought as she went to the next cell. The more she freed, the more she knew the guards would come. They'd hear the noise. They'd see the commotion. Every child she freed put her further from her own freedom. A little boy with freckled skin, ragged red hair, and muddy face touched Willa's arm as two of the other children ran up the corridor. I've seen her, the boy said. I saw the Cherokee girl. She was in the cell across from me when I was down in the bad part. She kept telling me not to give up. The bad part, Willa said. Where is that? The red-headed boy pointed further down the corridor. There's a tunnel off to the side that goes to the right, through an area where there's been a cave-in and then curves way down deep. It's the third door. Thank you, Willa said. Now run. As the boy made his escape, Willa ran in the opposite direction, down into what he had called the bad part of the prison. The rotting ceiling sagged so low that she had to duck beneath it to get through. Other areas she had to climb. Black mold coated the woven stick walls. A dank, unbearable stench filled her nostrils. Finally, she came to the third door and peered into the darkness. Willa saw the arms and legs first, all folded up in the corner of the cell. The hands, the thigh, the whole body was wrapped around something. The brown skin of the arms and legs was dirty, scraped, and bruised. The long black hair was matted, hanging all around the arms and legs and the thing inside. And then the eyes opened and looked at her, brown in color and staring warily back at her. She's alive, Willa thought in relief. The girl's arms and legs pulled inward, wrapping more tightly around the small boy she was protecting in the bend of her body. Whatever you are, stay away from us, the girl said, her voice laced with intense fear as she jerked deeper into her cell. Get away from us. Willa pulled back, startled, crammed down in this darkened cell. This girl had been through too much. Willa slowly crouched to the floor, lowering herself so she could look less threatening, and spoke in her softest voice. My name is Willa, she said. I'm a friend of Iska and your father, and I'm here to help you. Halia, if you'll let me, I'm going to get you and Anali out of this cell. Halia stared back at her in shock. It appeared to be the first time anyone had said her name in weeks. How do you know my name? She asked. I saw it written on your grave, Willa thought, but she did not say it. I know your father, she said. He told me all about you and your brothers. You're going to get us out? She said in amazement, her voice filled with disbelief and uncertainty. Is this a trick? Willa slowly opened the cell door. Don't come any closer, Halia shouted at her, holding her crying brother tight to her body. I'm not coming in, Willa said, moving back away from the door. The choice is yours. She said, speaking so softly now that she knew the girl could barely hear her. Iska's waiting for us, Halia, but we don't have much time. We have one chance to get out, and that chance is now. But we've got to run. We've got to fight. I'm not certain we'll succeed. If they catch us, they're going to kill us, but we have this one chance to either cower down here in the cell or to run for home. Which do you want to do, Halia? Halia stared at her, still holding her brother. I want to run, she said. When Willa extended her hand, Halia took it. She pulled the girl and her brother out of the cramped confines of the cell. As Halia rose to her feet, Willa saw she was surprisingly tall, with a long, lean body and arms and legs to match. She had long, straight black hair that fell down to her waist, and her face was filled with stern determination. Her little brother, Anali, clung to her chest, looking around with bewildered eyes. But he'd stopped crying. It seemed as if Halia had been holding and protecting her little brother for weeks. It was the bond that could not be broken. We've got to hurry, Willa said, leading them up the corridor. When Willa began to run, Halia ran with her. The girl had been resistant to trust her at first, but now that she understood what they needed to do, she was moving quickly. When Willa ran faster, Halia stayed right with her. The girl's legs were strong and pumped hard. She and Willa ran side by side, both of them scanning ahead and looking behind them, ready for the worst. "Just hold on, Anali, I've got you," Halia whispered to her brother as they ran. "We're getting out." When they came to an obstruction in their path where part of the old tunnel had caved in and blocked their way, Willa climbed up on top of it and then reached down. Halia handed Anali up to her, climbed up herself, then took her brother back into her arms on the other side. As they ran through the corridors past the other prison cells, Willa could see they were all empty. She had freed every last prisoner she could find. She, Halia, and Anali all ran down winding tunnel after winding tunnel. "It's not much further," Willa told them. As they turned the final corner, Willa saw the last of the escaping children at the end of the corridor. They were getting down onto their hands and knees and crawling frantically into the hole. Only one small face remained peering out. "Iska!" Halia cried out with relief. Willa's heart swelled with hope. They were going to make it. They were all going to make it. But then a rushing sound rose up behind them, the pounding of many feet and the clatter of weapons. "Run!" Willa screamed at Halia, then turned to stand her ground against the coming guards. The first guard charged towards her and thrust his spear. Willa leapt back just in time, but another guard attacked from the other side. There was a swarm of at least a dozen of them. "It's the Jader!" Lorcan shouted, looming above the other Night Spirit guards as he pushed through them to reach her. "It's Willa! Get her!" Two of the other guards charged in, stabbing frantically. Willa dodged and dodged again. She glanced back behind her to see Halia running for the hole with her brother in her arms. A guard lunged forward and grabbed at Willa, but Willa leapt out of his grasp. Lorcan jabbed in with his spear. Willa tried to leap to the side, but the sharp tip grazed her leg and sliced through her skin with a painful, ripping tear. That's when Willa realized that Lorcan's spear wasn't just a wooden stick like it had been before. The tip had been equipped with one of the flint arrowheads that she herself had provided to the clan, so sharp that it could easily slice through muscle and bone. One of the other guards thrust his spear and stabbed her in the arm. Bolts of pain radiated through her shoulder and hand, driving a scream from her lungs. She tried to dodge the next stab. She tried to fight them all, but it was no use. She couldn't hold them off any longer. She turned and fled for the hole. She could feel herself getting further away from them with every step she took. Her heart swelled with hope that she was going to make it. But as she ran away, Lorcan pulled back his arm and hurled his killing spear like a javelin. It shot through the air and struck her in the neck with a shocking blow and knocked her to the floor. She looked down towards the end of the corridor, and the last thing she saw was Nathaniel's children disappearing into the escape hole. And with that, we will stop at the end of chapter 61 and pick up next time in our adventures with Willa of the Wood.